We continue with the second part of our two-part sermon series, Can Jesus Heal My Addict? Last week we talked about the addict as the one who was dependent. Today we want to talk about those of us who have addicts in our lives and to talk about codependency. So I think between addiction, alcoholism, and dependency, and between codependency and having any family member involved in addiction or alcoholism, I think I've got everybody in here covered. Amen? So I have a question for you. Who's your addict? Who's your addict? Now, don't say it out loud. Don't point fingers. But in your mind, while we speak the next few minutes, I want you to think about your addict, the one in your life. If there is an addict, an alcoholic, and we talked about this last week, that we as a nation are enablers in this false distinction between drugs and alcohol, because alcohol is a drug. But for social reasons, we speak of it differently. But addiction is addiction, whether it's a substance or a behavior, and has afflicted so many people in different ways. So if there is an addict in your life, if there's an addict in your life, you might be a codependent. If you give your addict $20 for lunch money at school or at work, when you know the last time they bought drugs and alcohol with it, but you give it to them anyway because they have to eat, you might be a codependent. If you let your addict drive your car after they crashed theirs or had it repossessed because they have to get to work, you might be a codependent. If you buy your addict, alcoholic, their alcohol and their drugs because I don't want them to go out and steal it, you might be a codependent. If you forgive your addict or alcoholic after a relapse, not because you really forgive them, but because you fear that if you don't, they won't like you, they won't love you anymore, you might be a codependent. The traits of codependency have been evolved over the last several years, and this is one of the primary attributes of codependency is denial. We don't even see our addict as an addict. We don't see them as an alcoholic. We ignore and minimize and rationalize, hoping and praying things will get better. And there's another way of understanding denial. Some say it's not just a river in Egypt, but I found this one the other day. Denial is, don't even notice I'm lying. Codependency also has the attribute of excessive caretaking. We feel responsible for the other person. We take care of them to save them from themselves. I thought this was a cute way of putting it. A gathering of superheroes, and they're calling the roll. Anxious Andy, OCD Olivia, Belligerent Bob. Anyone seen Codependent Carol? She's out saving people who don't want to be saved again. And this was my favorite. I think we've all been there. Son, we're stuck. Mind giving us a hand with your homework? But seriously, we mean well. We mean too well. And we do too well. We cover up. We make excuses. We manipulate the world to protect our addict from their consequences. If this pattern looks familiar to you, punishment and other attempts to control, and then we rescue them, but we feel victimized by the broken promises. If you're on this merry-go-round, you might be a codependent. Last week we talked about the tremendous contribution of Alcoholics Anonymous and its 12 steps to the recovery of millions of addicts and alcoholics around the world. Recovery for millions from every kind of addiction. But along with Alcoholics Anonymous key insights about addiction are key insights about those living with alcoholics and addicts. And that key insight is the parallel movement that's called Al-Anon. Al-Anon is for families of alcoholics. Yes, it says alcoholism is a disease. And like a disease, it is contagious. The whole family gets infected. The whole family gets sick when even one member is an addict or alcoholic. The whole family suffers. The whole family is impacted. The whole family may even be addicted, not to a substance, but addicted to their addict. Sometimes so addicted, they do all they can to enable in order to keep their addict an addict, because they wouldn't know what to do if their addict didn't need them anymore. As we read the gospel story of the father bringing his son to Jesus to be healed, we read it with this new lens. And reading it with this new lens, let me ask you a question. Who do you think is the codependent in the gospel story? The father. The father, yes, the father. Why is the father a codependent? Because he is seeking the cure for his son. Now, he refers to him as a boy, and yeah, I still refer to my boys as boys. In fact, someone reminded me that I refer to my 28-year-old as being 2018, and my 26-year-old as 2016, because they both are back living at home. And I say, until you have your own car and your own car insurance, your own phone and your own phone plan, and your own apartment and paying your own rent, you are still in your teens. So the father refers to him as his boy, but this boy could be quite grown. It is the father seeking the cure for his son, not the son seeking the cure for himself. The father goes to clinic after clinic and magician after magician and healer after healer and doctor after doctor and disciple after disciple, and finally, after his son has never gotten healed, he gets to Jesus. And he says to Jesus, if you are able to do anything, have pity on us and help us. So even the father has the insight that it's not just his son that is sick. Help us, he says. The father recognized it was a family disease. Jesus says, yes, if you believe, it is possible. The Father answers, I believe. Help my unbelief. Just as we answer to our own addicts, do we believe that they're going to recover? We believe, but help my unbelief. It's this mix of belief and doubt that we all have. What would give a parent hope of recovery for their child after a lifetime of addiction? Jesus asked him, how long has he been this way? He said, since childhood. And how many stories do we know? How many children do we know? How many adults do we know who have been suffering from some form of addiction from childhood? Only the experience, strength, and hope of other families who have had an addict or alcoholic to find sobriety and who themselves have found healthy detachment from their addict. Only their experience, strength, and hope shared in these meetings can possibly give a father, a mother, a brother hope that their addict might one day find sobriety, or that they themselves might find that healthy detachment that is the goal for codependence. Codependency is the name of the disease given to family members of addicts. And family members means everybody. Spouses, partners, adult children of alcoholics, teenagers suffer in their families, parents, grandparents, siblings, and I dare say cousins, aunts, and uncles too, because if they are in your life, if they are in your family life, they have an impact on you. Sometimes codependent persons go beyond their own disease of codependency and seek comfort in actual addiction themselves. Anyone can become codependent in a relationship with a person, regardless of whether you are their parent or a friend. If you are in relationship with an addict, you are at risk of codependency. And do not be fooled. One can be codependent and dependent at the same time. If Jesus cannot heal your addict, why do you think you can? Yet we spend our whole lives trying to heal that addict. It is loving, healthy detachment that we seek to achieve as codependents. Healthy, loving detachment is to realize you have no control and never did over your addict. No control over their drinking, no control over their drugging, no control over their behavior. Loving, healthy detachment is to realize that you did not cause their addiction, and that you are not able to love them out of their addiction. You cannot be their higher power. Loving, healthy detachment is to realize that they must have and they must find their own higher power. So be like that father. Bring your addict to Jesus, but then leave him there and go on to live the life that God intended for you. Let the people of God say, amen.